Something unprecedented just happened. Americans are defending Canada. And I need to tell you about a moment that's quietly rewriting everything we thought we knew about American politics. Because what I witnessed this week isn't just another headline or news cycle. It's a crack in the foundation of how power actually works in this country. Picture this. I'm sitting in my office, watching the latest escalation in the trade war unfold when something stops me cold. And no, it wasn't Trump's predictable attacks on Canada. We've seen that script before. What froze me was the response from my own side. Republicans, conservatives, people I've worked alongside for decades. They weren't rallying behind the flag. They were defending Canada. Let me pause here, because I know exactly what you're thinking. Conway's lost it. Republicans defending a foreign country? Stay with me, because what comes next is far more revealing than you might expect. Stephen Schmidt. You know Stephen, the Republican strategist who helped build the McCain campaign, said something on television that should alarm every American who still believes in constitutional governance. He called Trump's behavior toward Canada petty, malicious, and most chilling of all, fundamentally destructive to American interests. And here's what truly shook me. He wasn't alone. Across conservative media, former Republican operatives, policy experts, even some current GOP members were quietly acknowledging what many of us have known for years. Chaos isn't strength. It's weakness disguised as leadership. And there's Mark Carney, Prime Minister Carney, responding to American pressure with the kind of calm, disciplined competence that once defined American leadership itself. While Trump escalates, Carney de-escalates. While Washington manufactures noise, Ottawa builds strategy. The contrast is so stark, it's almost embarrassing. And here's why this matters to you personally. We are watching the erosion of America's most important economic relationship in real time. And that damage is already reaching into your wallet, whether you've noticed it yet or not. Let me explain the economics that almost no one is laying out honestly. Canada isn't just a friendly neighbor we trade with now and then. It's a $1 trillion relationship woven into your everyday life in ways you probably never think about. Your morning coffee, your gasoline, your aluminum cans, the steel in your car, the electricity powering your home. Massive portions of all of it flow from Canada. But here's the part that should keep you awake at night. When you treat your closest economic partner like an adversary, they don't argue forever. They adapt. They plan around you instead of with you. They diversify. They reduce exposure. And once that process begins, it's almost impossible to undo. I've spent my career studying how institutions fail. And I'm telling you, this is exactly how it starts. Not with dramatic collapses, but with quiet recalculations. Canadian firms partnering with Europe. Canadian energy rerouted to Asian markets. Canadian investment capital flowing anywhere except American projects. The psychological damage may be even worse. When your closest ally begins to question your reliability, other allies start asking the same question. Our credibility, built over 70 years of consistent leadership, is being burned down for short-term political theater. And this is where it becomes deeply personal for me. As a constitutional lawyer, I'm watching Americans praise a foreign leader for qualities we once demanded from our own president: restraint, competence, respect for democratic norms, and the rule of law over the rule of personality. That should horrify every American, no matter their party. Here's what decades inside Republican politics taught me. Power isn't about who shouts the loudest or threatens the hardest. Real power comes from being the partner others choose to work with, not the bully they tolerate. Carney understands this. Trump treats every relationship like a zero-sum fight. Carney treats partnerships as shared investments. While our leadership creates uncertainty, Canada offers stability. And in a volatile world, stability is the ultimate advantage. The most dangerous part of all this? Americans defending Canada aren't doing it because they love foreign leaders more than their own country. They're doing it because they recognize something we've lost. The belief that leadership means absorbing pressure, not amplifying it. That strength comes from trust, not intimidation. I think about my work with the Lincoln Project, about our warnings on constitutional democracy, and I realize this Canada moment is a perfect microcosm of everything we've been saying. When institutions stop functioning predictably, everyone pays, but the least powerful pay first. Want proof? Drive through upstate New York, where Canadian tourism keeps entire towns alive. Visit border communities where cross-border commerce employs thousands of American workers. Talk to manufacturers whose supply chains depend on Canadian inputs. These aren't abstractions. These are Americans whose livelihoods depend on relationships. Our leadership is systematically destroying. The tragedy is that none of this was inevitable. Canada has been our most reliable ally for generations. They've fought beside us, shared intelligence, coordinated policy, and absorbed costs when we asked them to. And we're throwing it all away for political theater that doesn't even help the people it claims to protect. But there is a flicker of hope. Recognition is spreading. More Americans are looking north and seeing what real leadership looks like. They're realizing that competence isn't flashy, that strength doesn't require constant performance, and that real power operates quietly and effectively. Schmidt's comments matter because they signal something deeper: institutional memory pushing back against institutional destruction. People who remember when American leadership meant building coalitions, not burning bridges. Last week, I saw this firsthand. I was at a Washington dinner party, policy insiders, former officials, people trying to make sense of this moment. The conversation turned to Carney, and something remarkable happened. Republicans and Democrats alike began describing him with words we once reserved for American presidents: steady, principled, adult, competent. Then came the silence, because everyone realized what had just happened. We were praising a foreign leader for qualities that should be baseline in American governance. The shame in that room was unmistakable. Democracies depend on predictable institutions. When everything bends to personal whim, governance collapses, markets freeze, allies hedge, investment stalls, workers suffer. This is why Carney's approach resonates so deeply with Americans right now. He represents continuity in chaos, competence over performance, dignity in an age of degradation. These aren't Canadian values, they're American values we've misplaced. The data is clear. Uncertainty costs money. Erratic trade policy delays investment. Unstable alliances push partners elsewhere. And unpredictable leadership raises prices while lowering reliability. But the human cost cuts deeper. Families whose security depends on stability. Workers whose jobs exist because of cooperation. Communities whose prosperity relies on partnerships we're abandoning. Let this sink in. We are living in a moment where American conservatives are publicly stating that a Canadian prime minister demonstrates more leadership capability than their own president. This isn't partisan rhetoric, it's institutional judgment from people who spent their lives building American power. The irony is brutal. We spent decades teaching the world about democratic norms and the rule of law. Now our closest neighbor is teaching us. Carney doesn't need 3 a.m. tweets to project strength. He doesn't insult allies to show resolve. He governs like adults are supposed to govern. What keeps me up at night is the psychological damage. We're teaching a generation of Americans that chaos is normal governance. When they look north and see a democracy functioning without constant crisis, what does that tell them about their own system? What if the real threat to American democracy isn't external? What if it's our inability to recognize competence when it's right in front of us? Our addiction to drama, our confusion of noise with power. Canada is holding up a mirror. The reflection isn't flattering, but mirrors don't lie. Here's my prediction, and I hope I'm wrong. The realization that principled, competent leadership matters will only grow as the costs become undeniable. Americans will search for leaders who understand that in an interconnected world, going it alone isn't strength, it's suicide. The only question is whether we learn that lesson before or after we've done irreversible damage to relationships that took generations to build. This isn't just a trade dispute. It's a test of whether democratic institutions can survive leaders who see them as obstacles instead of foundations. And right now, our neighbors are showing us what passing that test looks like. The choice is clear. We can continue down the path of institutional destruction, or we can remember what American leadership actually means. The world is watching. History is recording. And our neighbors are showing us the way.